Welcome to another episode of the Impossible Life Podcast. I'm your co-host, Nick Surface, and I'm looking across at a man who has never owned a flashlight or been lost for a moment in his life. That's right, friends, the former Navy SEAL, Garrett Unkelbach, a man who was born equipped with GPS and night vision.
There's a lot of truth in that, but it's not the whole truth. I have been lost before, which I unlost myself.
Oh, did you, Captain?
And I do own a flashlight, but I also have night vision.
You unlost yourself?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, okay. All right. Anyways, I got to see this firsthand. So this is a very specific one. Garrett and I climbed a mountain in between the time that we released our last podcast and this one released. And it was a very fun experience.
It was awesome.
We learned a lot. I got to see Garrett just, in his element. We'll get into it more. But basically, it's very relevant to today's episode, which is on pain.
Well, I think why don't you just finish a little bit of that where the intro came from?
Well, dude, so first of all, I mean, I've talked about some of this stuff before, man. Like, I don't have a great directional sense. Garrett has a very, very good directional sense.
Not great is an understatement.
Thank you for stressing that yet again. We're walking and he'll challenge me. He's like, "Hey, Nick, which direction is the car from here?" And I'm like, "Oh man, I got it right." So, eat it. I'm getting better. Garrett has a very good directional sense. He's very good at like charting. He takes points of reference. Obviously he was a SEAL, so I mean they taught him how to do the stuff correctly. And then the night
just because I'm a SEAL, it's good at it.
Yeah, bro, you were born with it. Anyways, everything's easy for you. Anyways, but the night vision thing. So like the GPS, we've talked about that before, but the night vision thing's actually legit. So I was reminded of a story when we were out. Garrett stressed to us. We basically all spent the night on this mountain. And so we woke up and
gave you guys some really great referenced experience for getting up at 4 a.m.
Oh my gosh. If you want to get up at 4 a.m. and you feel like that's difficult, start waking yourself up at 1:10 in the morning. Cause that's what I did. I got up at 1:15 to make myself breakfast with freeze-dried food.
Some people don't go to sleep until that time.
Exactly. And I was already getting up because we'd gone to bed at 6:30. Anyways, we're getting too far down the line. We're going to tell more of the story. But the point is, Garrett stressed to us because we were waking up at that time how important our night vision was and told us, don't put any white light on. Keep the red light on your headlamp.
Don't look at your phone.
Yeah.
Don't turn the white light on your headlamp because most people don't know this, but men survived very well for a long time before electricity.
Right.
And because if you'll
That's a sarcastic statement, folks.
If you'll use your eyes correctly, you can see pretty well in the dark.
Right. But there's one way to actually have night vision. It's a whole another one to just be a jerk towards everyone else about it. And when we ran the 100-miler last year, I was carrying a bunch of boxes and I couldn't see where I was going. And I'm going, hey, can someone come up here with a flashlight? And I will paraphrase for you. Garrett just asked me why I suck so much. Maybe that's not a paraphrase. That's actually what he said because he was just like, how can you not see in this? And he was just like, whatever, bro, you're weak. You don't have night vision like I do. And he meant it. So there you go. There's a fun story.
That's not what I said, but it's definitely what Nick heard.
I'm pretty sure you said why do we? Anyways, yeah, it was sure it's a paraphrase, but I captured the essence. Anyways,
all right,
we're talking about pain. We're going to tell you more about that because the mountain story really does have a lot more to it, and it's very relevant to what we're talking about today, which is pain, and the purpose of pain. So we're actually going through this in Mindset Mastery right now, G. We're covering fear and pain on a much deeper level. We're actually this is nothing like what we're covering today is very different to what we're covering in Mindset Mastery, but still very useful and very relevant. Even to the people who are on Mindset Mastery, I feel like they'll be like, oh, this is a little bit of bonus coverage on pain. Mm-hmm. So whether you're on Mindset Mastery or not, you're going to enjoy this. It is a great topic.
Pain will go as far as you want to go with it.
Isn't that the truth? Well, G, we are addicted to pain medications in this country.
That's the truth.
And it's crazy. It's crazy how much in this country, in the United States of America, we have just get a prescription drug. So between the years of 2015 and 2018, according to the CDC, which not sure how reliable they are these days as far as their reputation goes due to recent events, but I think these will be accurate. The percent of people using at least one prescription drug in the past 30 days during that period, G, they only used one during a period of 30 days. What percentage of the U.S. population?
Is this prescription drug or prescription pain medication?
Prescription drug.
What percentage of the U.S. population?
Yeah. Only using one.
Oh, wait. Okay, the percentage of people that are only using one.
In a 30-day period, yeah.
Because so many people would be using more, I would say, maybe only 25%.
48.6% of Americans used at least one prescription drug.
Oh, you said only one, not at least one.
used at least one prescription drug in the past 30 days. I'll just do this because you're not being as fun with this. The percent of people using 3 or more prescription drugs in the past 30 days was 24%. The percent of people using 5 or more prescription drugs in the past 30 days was 12.8% during that time period. The point being, it is a massive...
Around 75% of people are on some sort.
Yeah, there was a percent of visits involving drug therapy for physician offices was 72%. That's crazy. There was over 1 billion drugs prescribed for physician office visits during that time.
If you're not on a prescribed drug, you are not you're not the norm, you're the exception.
Yeah, which is just, I mean, that's mind-blowing. I said this on Mindset Mastery, and it's worth sharing, because I lived in the UK for 9 years. I remember how weird it was when I would come back from there, and, I watched TV, whatever, I was over in the UK. I would come back to America for a visit, and I would turn on the TV, and I would see all these, like, pharmaceutical ads, and it was so weird. That just doesn't exist outside America, where it's like we love prescription drugs so much, we need to advertise them, while you're watching sports.
It's crazy. It's slightly different, but it's crazy to me how many young people are on like antidepressant drugs.
Yeah, I agree, man. Yeah, that should be a time when you're not depressed at all.
Far too much, which is a form of pain, right? I would say
Big
that
time.
for a lot of people, an antidepressant is like a pain medication.
Yeah, no, that's
and there's a lot of people that'd be really upset with that statement, but.
Well, hey, it's not the first time that you've said some things that would upset people, so why stop? Anyways, so on to what we're going to talk about. So the mountain story and where this comes in. So like I said, Garrett and I really just went to hike a mountain.
I had a great time. Because,
I did too.
I know you had a great time. My great time was a little bit different than your great time.
Yeah, Garrett likes watching people in pain, like truthfully.
Well, and if you've been to altitude before, you know what it's like. And
we did say
by
that,
altitude, I mean like you've been above like 10 or 11,000. Going to 9,000 feet is one thing, but you get up above 11 and 12, and it's very different. And we went to almost 14,000 feet, and I will just say a lot of these guys hadn't been that high before. So their experience at altitude was very different than mine.
Garrett took 11 of us newbies. Literally nobody had any backpacking or mountaineering experience. We all bought gear.
There's a couple of hikers. Some of you are pretty good athletes. Yeah. That helps. Some people were just fired up.
Yeah. Some people just said, "Hey, what a great time with my friends." So this was for the leadership, for some of the leaders in our men's group at church. Right. And so Garrett takes 11 of us up this mountain. I was pumped, man. This is like, for me, being a kid growing up in Southern California, like the idea of putting everything you need to survive on your back and like going up a mountain. I was all for this because that was something I just never got to do. So what Garrett forgot to mention was that what elevation does to you. And I suppose I could have Googled it myself. I completely glossed over this fact.
I focused on the things that they needed to know.
Yeah, he was hard on us about gear, about getting the right food. Like gave us a gear list. Really, really good. Thanks, Garrett. Appreciate that. We get up to a place called Leadville, which if you're an ultra marathon runner, you know the Leadville 100. We get up there. This thing is like at 10,200 feet. It's the highest elevation populated city in America. Well, 10,000 feet, little did I know, was enough to jack you up. So I'm in good shape. I get out of the car. I do what I normally do. I grab my bags out the back.
We flew in and drove straight there. Flew into Colorado Springs, drove straight there, and we're sitting at dinner. And almost everyone at dinner just looked hungover.
Oh, well, no, you're like fast forwarding. I got out of the car and grabbed my bags, and I was already drinking more water. And I asked you, I was like, "Gee, does elevation make you thirstier?" And you're like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay, whatever. I'll be thirstier. I can deal with that." So when I got my bag and I got out of the car, my bags weigh like 30 pounds. It was nothing that is anything remotely strenuous for me. I walk up, not 5 flights, 5 actual stairs, and get to the lobby, and I start coughing like I just did, like I had just run wind sprints. If you've ever run wind sprints hard enough that you start coughing and hacking, that was literally what happened. I couldn't stop coughing. I started getting all dizzy, and I'm out of breath, and my heart rate just spikes up to like the 160s, and I'm going, what is going on? I had no idea what was happening. So
get your bag out of the car.
Yeah, I don't know. It sounds pretty hard. It was like I became 120 like overnight, or in like 5 minutes. So the point being, altitude is very, very difficult. And so what happened was, through multiple nights of very bad sleep, and then we actually start hiking up to this elevation. Imagine, like the way I've described it is, imagine that you have COVID brain fog, which if you got COVID and you got brain fog, you know what that's like. That's what it felt like. And you're hungover, which I hope you've never had a hangover, but I'm guessing a large amount of our population knows what that feels like. And then you're doing a stair stepper that just never ends. And that was literally my mountain hiking experience. Like, there were some really cool moments. I got to drink from a stream. I never quit.
Most of our guys said it was the hardest thing that they'd ever done.
And
we were hiking for 6 straight hours, just like pushing for 6 straight hours.
9.5 hours it ended up
Well,
being.
that's up.
Right.
The
Yeah, 6
the
hours.
up was almost 6 hours.
Well, the down sucked as well. I mean,
yeah, but you can't quit on the way down.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that's actually true.
The point I was making was for almost 6 hours on the way up, guys were having the hardest time they'd ever had, and many of them were like, "Yeah, for over an hour, I thought I was going to quit."
Yeah, they confessed that on the way back down. Now, I can say that I was never contemplating quitting because the thought of quitting hurt way worse than whatever I was experiencing at the moment. But I got some very valuable takeaways.
The takeaway from altitude, I know for you, and you probably have many other takeaways, but the takeaway is that altitude is a different type of pain.
Oh, big time. I mean, it was a force multiplier for pain. I honestly can't express to you how much, like, it's you're like, oh, headache, come on, bro, like, get tough. No, I'm telling you, like, this is like a pounding headache. You're out of breath. You can hardly do any physical activity.
I think the best
and I felt
analogy,
like I was going to pass out the whole time.
Best analogy for altitude is increased gravity.
Right.
Is that like just everything's harder.
Yeah. I mean, that's a lot like being around you. Anyways, you are the altitude of life. I should have had that as your intro.
I am increased gravity, but I'm making you stronger.
Okay. And this is like, he actually believes that. But the reason we talk about
evidence.
that, we're going to get into like the different types of pain, how to tell the difference. And most importantly, I'm guessing you're going to want to know how to endure pain. We are going to get to that. But I think when we talk about pain, people have, oh yeah, I know what pain is. Well, you do, but we've also classified pain. And I mean, we're talking about both physical and mental pain. And I like to talk about something called the pain cycle.
Yeah.
And people experience this all the time, and they just breeze past it. And so they get stuck in a cycle. And the cycle is you have a trigger, you feel some sort of pain, so then you numb the pain, there's a distraction, then the trigger comes again, and you have the pain again, then you numb it, and you literally just go past this all the time. And people breeze past this, and they don't even notice it. And we've talked about it on this podcast before, but like what this looks like, the way you can tell if you have a trigger and you're numbing pain is you'll have a sudden craving. That is the number one way to tell. People will be like, oh man, I just if you've ever picked up your phone and started scrolling social media, why'd you do that? If you've just suddenly been like, oh man, I need to get a snack like right now. Do you? Because hunger comes on gradually. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, we could go into some of the worst vices, like, oh, I just really need to smoke weed. I need to just look at porn. I need to just
By the way,
drink.
Pro tip for any of those like triggers, whether it's Instagram or a snack or whatever, just make them less easy for you to get to, right? For a lot of people, they have like Instagram on their home screen.
Yeah, big time.
Right? Don't have Instagram on your home screen. I put Instagram, like I have like 5 pages of apps. I put Instagram on the last one, and I removed it from my search. So like I can't swipe on an iPhone. I can't swipe down and search for Instagram to get to it either. Like I pull up a lot of apps that way. The only way for me to get to Instagram is like to swipe over 5 times to get to the app.
Yeah.
And in that amount of time, you'll become conscious of a trigger.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, hopefully.
Same with the snack.
But I hope the craving is enough for people to go like, oh, okay. Because that really is it. When you suddenly get this urge, something's triggered it. And if you ask yourself what just happened, you'll probably realize, you know what? Something just happened. I had a fight with somebody that's close to me. I got a bad news about something. Insert whatever just happened right before. And you're getting triggered by things that are causing you pain, and your response to it is to numb it. And you go like, well, big deal. I look at Instagram whenever I get a bad email. It helps me cope. Okay, yeah, that's cool. But you're not actually addressing what's going on underneath. And I guarantee you that like pain isn't just going to stay.
You'll stay in that loop.
Yeah, and it'll get worse because I've said this before. Like if you're the type of person that blows up, because that's what people do when things frustrate them. They'll say, oh, it's frustrating. I'm angry. That's pain. Right? Like, and that's your response to pain. And so sometimes people will have these really big blow up reactions, and it's because they've practiced it and rehearsed it over and over and over again. And as long as you're numbing the pain, you're not dealing with it. And I mean, you love the saying, kill what's killing you, right?
Yeah. So you got to get out of the cycle.
Big time.
And the only way to get out of the cycle, it's a military saying, is to kill what's killing you.
Yeah.
Right. There's things that are fighting against you. There's things that are working against you. You need to identify what that is. And you need to get rid of it.
Right.
Right. And that's what we're saying with this cycle. Right. Don't just stay in the loop of bowing to your pain.
Yeah.
Then it just gets worse. And then you come back to it again and again and again. The thing that's causing the pain, you need to get rid of it.
Yeah. And people will think like, oh, social media is not a big deal. This isn't a big deal. But like in the other instances, like as the more research we get on like things like weed smoking and the more people dive into what alcohol actually does to you, you're creating a whole new problem for yourself. And we've talked about this before, so I don't think we need to keep going on it.
Yeah. I want to go deeper on pain today. And I wouldn't call it fortunate. I would just say I've been in the unique position of being with a lot of people in serious pain, right? And in deep pain. And I don't just mean in the military, right? I've gotten to be around a lot of people going through very difficult pain in their life. And I think there's something very curious about pain, in that pain becomes emotional for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Right? Like pain will make you cry, right? But that's not necessarily the emotion part. But pain will bring up emotions in people. Sometimes people go through pain, like we see it in the ice bath. Like people start crying in the ice bath. And it's not,
I've seen that.
But it's not because their feet hurt. It's not because their toes hurt. It's not because they're uncomfortable, right? That pain is bringing up emotions.
Yes.
And you have to ask the question, why is pain emotional?
Yeah.
Why? Because, people aren't animals, but I've seen a lot of animals get injured very badly, right? I've seen injured animals, seen animals get hit by a car, seen an animal with a missing leg. I've seen all kinds of, like, you spend a lot of time outside, you'll see how crazy nature is. Like, you don't see, these animals feel pain, but they're not crying about it.
Yeah.
Right. And so why do humans cry about their pain? Because, well, we're going to get into it, but there's a deep emotion that's attached to our pain. And it's coming from a place that, if you look at the difference, understand the difference between man and the other creatures on the earth, there's things that we don't have. And that's really where the emotion of pain comes from.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting about pain, I found this really, really fascinating, is that people feel pain differently. And if you go to your doctor, you're like, oh, well, what do you mean? Well, high blood pressure is high blood pressure. You got some pretty clear numbers on that. If you go to your doctor and you tell him that you're having some pain in your knee, he's going to start asking you questions. Hey, is it throbbing? Is it come on suddenly? Is it always hurting? And then he's going to say, hey, rate your pain for me. And this is such a weird, like, think about how advanced we are. We can literally FaceTime someone that's like across the world. And yet if you go to a doctor and say, hey, I'm having some pain, hey, rate it for me between 1 to 10. That's like the most subjective thing you've ever heard. I don't even know if you would do an employee review that way, but like you're rating your pain. And so we have this whole,
we did reviews that way in the military, where it was like, hey, rate yourself. How good do you think you are? And then basically every single one of these I did, and I was like, okay, I understand how this works.
Yeah.
Right. Like the first time I did one of those, I was like, I feel like I'm doing pretty good. Like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You're not doing
whatever you think, you're wrong. I'm a 1. Oh, bro, no, you're right. You're less than a 1.
basically.
But like, you think about that, that's a really crazy way that we influence pain, but it is truly because people feel pain differently. And so they've actually looked into this more. And there's the sensation of pain that you feel, and there's a very scientific way that looks at, you can look at they're called nociceptors, the things that actually receive outward pain, like a poke or a prick or a scrape to yourself, and it feeds it up through your spinal cord and up to your brain. So that's like the science of it. But the actual psychology of it, and this is what's really interesting about how people feel differently, your experience of it can be heightened or reduced based on your emotional or psychological state, your memories of previous pain, your upbringing, which I would say would influence a lot of your thinking, and your expectation and attitude towards pain, your beliefs and values, your age, your gender, and your social and cultural influences. Basically, there's a lot of things that can make your experience of it different.
Within all of those things, right, there's emotion. Right?
Yes.
There's a lot. Those are experiences.
Yeah.
There's beliefs in there. And there's emotion tied to experiences and beliefs.
Yeah.
And those things influence pain.
Yeah.
Right? So I think that emotions and how you feel about pain influences pain. And in the same way, pain can influence your emotions, right? And we're going to get into that deeper, but I want all of us to understand that these things are connected.
Yeah.
Right. What you've been through in your life, the things that you believe, the attitude that you have, it impacts the pain with how much pain you'll feel. Like how you feel about the pain impacts how much pain you feel.
Yes.
And the painful things that you go through, depending on who you are, depending on what you've been through, depending on what you believe, it may cause a very emotional experience for you, because it's going to bring you to a place where you're feeling not just the physical pain in the moment, but you're feeling the pain of what you've been through. You're feeling the pain of what you believe about yourself, which is actually far more painful than the pain of the moment.
But isn't that crazy though? I mean, I think that's fascinating that your brain can actually make it worse or better. I still think about our 100-mile experience when I had a very specific pain that people probably don't want to hear me talk about because it was not in a nice region. And I learned that you could zoom out on pain. That is still one of the most mind-blowing things. I feel about that moment, and this is complete rabbit hole, I feel about that moment the same way I feel about walking on hot coals with Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
Like when I walked on hot coals with Tony Robbins, I was like, literally, I was dumbfounded. And I think back to our experience on the 100-miler about how the pain literally disappeared when I zoomed out on it. I've never experienced anything like it, where you can just be like, oh, the pain just completely went away.
We give pain a voice.
We do.
Right.
Yeah.
When I've watched so many people quit
Right.
I don't mean just in SEAL training, right?
Yeah.
I've watched people quit in life. I've watched people quit in moments. And you can tell when someone's wanting to quit, right? Like, how can you tell? Like, it's so but it is so easy, right? You can see it in their, I remember in training, right? Like, especially during Hell Week, if you'd look at a guy and like, in a really bad moment and you crack a smile at him and he didn't crack a smile back, that guy's about to quit.
Yeah.
Right. But the guys who are like, yeah, this is really bad.
Yeah.
You know, like the way they felt about it, like it's bad, but we'll be okay.
Right.
Right. That those people are going to push through. That the way that you feel about your pain has a big impact on what it does to you.
That's so bad it's funny. There was a couple times on our mountain hike, which by the way, we're going to release a YouTube video because we shot a bunch of stuff when we went out and did it. And we also encountered 40-mile-per-hour gusts of winds in 28-degree weather while it was snowing when we were up near the peak. It was fun times. There was a number of times when my friend over here would look at me and just shoot me this little smirk. Like, it was very quick and I knew exactly what he was thinking. And I would just smile back and I'm like, yeah, this is kind of funny. And it did suck.
So I want to go deeper into how emotion is attached to pain, and I want to talk about that. There's two different types of pain, and I don't mean they're in a different way. Like, there's physical and emotional pain, but there's two different types of pain. You can put all your physical and mental pain in these two different categories. You have the category of pain that I call boundaries, right? Like, why do we have pain, right? That's what you should ask with anything. In the same way, like, this is the way, like, a lot of people respond to things with the pain trigger and the pain cue. Think about, like, you're walking down the street and some guy just comes up to you, like, grabs you by the shoulders and asks you a question.
Right.
Are you going to answer his question right away? That's what a lot of people do. They just respond to it. Right. If somebody came up to me as I'm walking down the street and just grabs me and, like, asks me a question, I would be like, excuse me? Like, who are you? Why are you asking me a question? Why do I have to answer your question?
Right.
Think of a great line from Parks and Rec. This is America, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have to answer stupid questions while I'm standing on my own property.
Well, there you go.
But when somebody would say that to you, right, you should, like, stop and prompt it. Like, why am I feeling this?
Yeah.
Why are you asking me this question? Why do I even have to answer this question? So when you go through pain, you need to say, like, why am I feeling pain? Well, one of the reasons that we feel pain is that pain's, like, meant to help us understand, like, my body's hurting. I need to tend to it, right? You don't want to, like, have an infection on the bottom of your foot. And you don't even feel it. Yeah. Right. It's like, oh, dang, my foot fell off. Yeah. Right? Like, you need to feel pain so that you can take care of your body. You need to feel pain so that, you know, there's some things in life, like, think about, like, you know, grabbing a hot pan. Yeah. Taught my toddler, hey, don't do that. That's bad. Right? And that's all that she needs to know is don't do it. But at some point in her life, I will teach her, you can move a hot pan, but you need to do it the right way. The first time you touch it, you're going to realize, man, I never want to do that again. Yeah. Right? Well, I actually do need to be able to move a hot pan, and there's a really simple way. I just put on an oven mitt. Yeah. Or I just grab a towel, and I can move a hot pan. So I say that to say some pain is what I call a boundary pain. Yeah. It's going to protect you, right? But this is actually not very many pains in life. A lot of people look at their pains in life. It's like, yep, need to turn around, right? We're going up the mountain for a reason. Yeah. And some people could have felt the altitude and like, this is a boundary pain, man. Nope. This is my body's saying this is bad. I should turn around. I'm uncomfortable. My body's telling me, like, this could hurt you. Yeah. Right. And I even know some people that, like, they had friends have that conversation with them. Like, man, are you sure? Like, should you follow Garrett up there? Like, that's dangerous. That could hurt you. Right. Yeah. A lot of people look at pain. It's like, this is a boundary. Just turn around. Yep. Can't go that direction anymore. So I want to say that to say there are pains in life that are boundaries. Right. The pain of a hot pan. Right. Okay, don't do that. Like, a lot of those types of pains are saying you should do this differently. Yes.
Yeah, you said the lesson of boundary pain is not this way, which I think is so well said.
Exactly. And there's and that's on the physical side, and there's not very many physical pains that are boundary pains. Right. Right. But there are ones like that are saying, like, this is a thing you shouldn't do. Don't hold a hot pan. There's nothing beneficial in that. I can find a better way to do it. Right. But on the mental side, there's also not very many what I would call boundary pains. A lot of people think their mental pains are boundary pains. I think the only mental pains that are boundary pains are mental pains of morality, right? Of like, man, I don't want to hurt people. I don't want to, like, cause harm to others. I don't want to do bad things, right? Like, it's painful to do those things. You feel pain in the worst way, right? The pain of letting people down, like stuff like that. Like, that's boundary pain. It's saying, like, man, you don't want to be there. And what do boundaries do? Boundaries protect us.
Right.
Like if you're driving on the road in Colorado on an icy road, you're really happy for those metal boundaries on the side of the road, because if you slip up, it's going to keep you from falling off of the cliff. We want those boundaries in our life. But there's a second type of pain. So boundary pain is protection pain.
Right.
And it's meant to keep you away from it, right? Or at the least, do this differently, right? Not this way. The other type of pain is barrier pain, right? And this is what we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today. Barrier pain. So boundary pain is for protection. Barrier pain is a limitation, right? But we have the opportunity to exceed limitations, to grow through limitations, right? For you, and I'm not saying that you won't adapt, because you did, but like when we first got there, you were feeling the limitations of your altitude adaptation, right? And you could have looked at that as barrier pain and said, nope, need to go back. Let's go back to Colorado Springs. I wasn't hurting there, right? My body told me to turn around already, right? So some pain is a barrier pain, which is meant for you to, it's a limitation. And what happens with our limitations is that we can grow from them. That type of pain can make us stronger. It just takes time. It takes preparation to be able to get through those things. The next time we go to altitude, Nick will feel a lot stronger. He'll do a lot better. It'll still be uncomfortable. Yeah. Right? The same way that like if you just start going to the gym, everything hurts.
Yeah, true.
When you get really strong, when you're in great shape and you train really hard, everything still hurts.
Right.
But you're really good at handling everything hurting. Like I felt the altitude the same way Nick did, but I'd been there many times before.
Yeah.
Right? When someone who's in really great shape goes to the gym and does a really hard workout, it's not that they don't feel pain. They just say like, I've felt this pain so many times. I'm very familiar with it and I know what it feels like. And it's certainly not a boundary. Where people think that a barrier is a boundary is because they don't have a lot of strength. They don't have a lot of preparation and they don't know how to tell the difference. Right. Right. And so in that, I want to say the reason I've really thought about this. I've also experienced it. I've walked through it with other people. The reason that pain feels emotional, right? And the reason for humans so much differently than an animal, that like for animals, they're not trying to tell the difference between a boundary and a barrier. Yeah. They're not like a deer is not trying to like become the best version of itself and grow and get better in life. It just is, right? But for us as humans, we know that we're capable of so much more. I know that I can get stronger mentally, physically. I know that I can be a better person. I can be a better father. I can be a better business owner, right? And I feel pain in all of those areas, right? And I say to myself, I can be better. I can get stronger. When I feel pain in my life, like if Nick had, pushed up the mountain as far as he could, and then he just like broke down, and even though it's a limitation boundary, like he just said, I can't take another step. Right. A lot of people in that place, they'll start to cry, not because of the pain, but because of the way the pain made them feel. Because what does that limitation tell you about yourself? There's the way that I look at it is you can like blue pill or red pill a boundary pain. I mean, a barrier pain. A barrier pain. You can blue pill or red pill a barrier pain. The blue pill is to say like, I'm going to turn around. I don't want this pain anymore, and I'm going to go back to where I came from. Or you can red pill that pain, and you can say, if you haven't watched The Matrix, I don't even know what to say anymore at this point. Just watch the movie. Or you can red pill that pain and say, no, I've been down the blue pill road. Right. I'm not going to go that way anymore. I'm going to continue. I'm going to advance. And what you do at that moment is you become something else. Yeah. You decide, I'm no longer going to be limited. I'm going to become better. I'm going to grow stronger. I'm not going to be afraid anymore. And I'm going to move into this place that I know I'm meant to be here. The reason people break down and cry in that moment when they U-turn, when they blue pill on the barrier pain, is because they feel inadequate. Yeah. They say they give up. And like a deer, when it feels pain, doesn't feel like, man, I'm just not really being what I'm called to be. Yeah. Right. But the reason that people cry in pain isn't just from like people cry from the how bad it hurts. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when people cry from the emotions of pain. It's because they're feeling the limitations of who they are. Yeah. Right. But and that hurts, right? Like to go back down the same road, to go back to where you came from. That's not what we want to be, because all of us have a sense of purpose inside of us. All of us have something within us that is calling us to be more, that is calling us to actually become what we were created to be. Yes. Like a seed must become a tree, right? And eventually that seed, it's either gonna die or it's gonna grow out of the ground. And we have to come to that place and say, you know what, I'm willing to bury myself in the ground, and I'm going to be all that I can be and grow through it. But that essentially, that's the reason that people cry when they feel those emotions of pain, is because they're feeling the limitations. They're feeling inadequacy.
Yeah.
And I know this is speaking to some people who are hearing this. I want this to be an awareness for you. I want this to be a wake up for you, that you need to decide to quit telling your barrier pains that they're boundary pains, right? Like, quit turning around on a pain that's meant to help you grow. When there's greatness on the other side of your pain, push through it.
Yes.
Grow through it, right? Like, it's going to hurt. You can get better. And even if you fail, don't quit on your pain, right? When you get up to altitude or whatever it is, whatever that thing is, where each step gets harder and harder and harder, you give all that you have. And if you fail, you can come back again and get further. But don't look at where you become the worst version of yourself, is where you say, no, I can't grow from this.
Yes.
This is just trying to protect me, and I need to go back. I'm not supposed to be here.
Yeah. I hope people are catching the perspective shift and the reframe that you're giving towards pain. Because to me, this is exciting. If you're somebody that you're like, oh, I've been doing terrible with pain, and somebody comes in and tells you, hey, guess what? You can get better with pain, because boundary pain is just telling you not this way. It's not saying, oh, you're done, like you've reached your physical limit. And the other one is the lesson is it's time to grow. And what we're telling you, and this is backed by science, is backed by experience, and we've got plenty of cases we can point to for proof, is that you can make it better. Not because you have to go and stab yourself with a bunch of needles, but because you can start thinking better and change your attitude and your mindset towards pain. You have an incredible growth mindset towards pain, G. People may or may not think of this, but like, if you're in the military, you get injured. If you're in special forces, you get injured a lot worse. And you were obviously in the SEAL team. So, you've had a number of things, and you've had people tell you, oh, hey, you're not going to run again. You had a bad back injury.
Yeah, I took a pounding for sure. But, I also looked at that, and I looked at the reference of some of my friends. I had friends lose limbs. I had friends get blown up, and they didn't quit, and they chose to keep going, right? Like, that encouraged me to push. Like, I had a doctor tell me, like, man, you're going to deal with this issue for forever. This will always cause you pain. You'll always be limited because of this. And I was like, I'm sure that's what your textbook says, right? But that's not who I am, right? I've been told before that you can't do this, right? You have to have a growth mindset around your pain. I had issues with discs in my back, and I was like, yeah, I'm sure a lot of the other people that you looked at their scans looked like mine, right? Just because their back looked like mine doesn't mean who they are is the same as who I am, right? And who I am is going to deal with the same X-ray, with the same scan, very differently than the way somebody else did. Yeah. Because that's not the only thing that determines my reality. Like, I didn't look at an X-ray, I didn't look at an MRI and say, yep, that's who I am. Right? I said, here's what I'm going to do with what's been given to me. I actually talked to somebody about this yesterday. Someone was telling me about their friend. I didn't tell them this, but who had the same injury as me, right? And they've really let it make them worse. They believed what the doctor said, and they've only gotten weaker, and they've gotten out of shape because of that. And I looked at this pain that somebody tried to tell me was a boundary pain, right? The same way that my friend who lost his leg, the same way that my friends who got blown up, who could have said, yeah, I guess I'm just, not meant to be healthy anymore. I guess I'm just not meant to, get better anymore. That was the end of the road for me. I guess I should just turn around and go home. And by go home, I mean quit. Yeah. By go home, I mean like not give an effort anymore. What I said was, well, how far can I go with this injury that I have? What can I still do? Instead of one of my friends lost his leg. He was a great surfer, right? And he could have said like, man, I guess I'll never surf again. He still surfs. He can't surf at the level that he did before. He's still 10 times the surfer that I am on one leg. Yeah. Right? He didn't say like, I guess I'll just go home. You decide what your injuries mean. You decide what your pain means. So many people get a prescription and they get a determination from a doctor of this is who you are now because of X, Y, and Z that you have. That's just one person's opinion, right? Like they know what your anatomy is, but your anatomy is not the whole truth. Why? Because you have the ability to change how you feel about your pain and how you feel about you can heal differently based upon your thoughts. And I'm not getting into like woo-woo stuff. I'm just telling you the power of your thoughts changes how you feel about pain, changes how your body is, right? Because try this. Go out with like a little boo-boo that you got, but focus on it. Focus on how bad it is. Yeah. And it'll turn into the worst pain that you've ever had, right? As Seneca says, most people suffer more in their minds than in reality. And I know that the opposite can be true as well. Yeah. That the pain can be really bad, but how you feel about it isn't that bad.
Yeah. I really hope that people, when you're hearing that, you're not just going, oh, well, you're a Navy SEAL and, you're just a little bit crazy, or, that's not me. Please don't do that.
Maybe I am crazy. Other people can be crazy too.
That's exactly the point. Like if look, if it bleeds, you can kill it. You're a human being.
Exactly right.
The point being, you're a human being.
Well, that was Arnold Schwarzenegger's thought process in Terminator. Most people say like, man, this thing, no one can kill this thing.
Yeah.
And he said, if it bleeds, we can kill it. It's a different perspective.
Yeah.
Right. If I can still walk, I could run.
Right.
If I can move a little bit, I can move a lot.
Yeah.
Or don't listen to the first thought, which most people have a knee-jerk reaction to pain. Right. And they get in the ice bath and they get right back out.
Yep.
Nope, that was bad. That hurt that hurt more than I thought. I wasn't prepared for that. I don't know how this is going to make me better. It's just better off that I don't touch this stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting though when you think about people, because what you're doing when we're talking about that is you're creating belief based off of somebody else's experience, and that's creating an experience that generates belief for you. And what I find, unfortunately, is so many people are really quick to take somebody's negative experience and be like, oh, okay, well, I should be cautious because this is definitely true. Whereas if somebody hears a guy like you going, hey, you know what? They told me that I was never going to be able to walk without pain, and I was definitely never going to be able to run. And guess what? I'm doing both every single day. I'm running another ultra marathon. Like, a lot of people will be like, oh, well, that's good for you. Why? Don't do that. Don't let an amazing experience of an amazing example of what's possible be given to you and you write it off. But when someone comes along, you know where the favorite place that people would do this, that me and my wife, it used to drive us crazy? When you're pregnant, everybody wants to come up and tell you their horror stories about
horror
birth.
Stories. Man.
All they want to do is just talk to you about, oh, let me tell you about ours. And you know what? My wife, I'm not yet to hear somebody that had a worse experience than my wife. And you know what? We don't tell everybody about it. Why? Because it was our experience, and my wife's awesome, and she powered through it, and we've had 3 kids. Okay, so I'm like, because she had a different mindset about it. Like when we're talking about these, we're not talking hypotheticals. We've both experienced it in our own lives. We've seen our wives go through it. We've seen people close to us. I mean, you have a lot more because of what you were surrounded by. So I just want to encourage everybody. So let's get into how to tell the difference between barrier.
Just to reemphasize that real quick before I move on, is have a growth mindset around pain. Right.
Yeah.
It's here's where you should have learned it if you haven't already, is in the gym.
Yeah, big time. It's a great training ground.
The gym is not for bodybuilders. Gym is not for people who suffer from vanity. The gym is for everybody.
Yeah,
right. And you don't have to pay for a gym membership. Your gym can be push-ups and squats. Your gym can be chasing your kids around. But everyone needs to exercise. And if you'll exercise like to the point of growth, right? A lot of people like to, well, doctor, how much do I need to walk that I don't die early?
Yeah.
Wrong.
Right.
False. Right. You need to say, like, how do I get better? How am I strong? And that's not just for a certain age of people either.
For everybody.
Right? Like, I don't care if you're 75 years old. How do I be stronger tomorrow than I am today? That's how you should live your life. And if you do that, you should have started when you were young. And if you didn't, that's okay. Do it now. But we should all do this from the time that we're young. And if you'll start to learn that, right, it's the first thing that God gave you to steward, right, is your body. You'll take care of it, and you'll also push it to the point of pain and get stronger. Come back and do the same thing you did yesterday, and you're like, man, this isn't as hard as it was.
100%. I mean, that's what I love.
That is the growth mindset of pain, and everything in life works that way.
Yeah. Like our mountain experience for me, my wife asked me if I enjoyed it, and I said, you know what, babe? I had a few moments where I kind of like stopped and really took it in, but for the most part, it was just a lot of suffering. But I look at that thing and all I do is smile, and I think about how great it was, because what an awesome reference experience to feel that terrible and be like, nope.
I think about all the things I'm going through in my life right now, the different businesses I manage, and some of the pains that I've worked through. I think about, I had a great takeaway yesterday. I got to speak at 2 different events yesterday. Speak to one group, drive to another event, speak a different message to a different group. And it was so great. I loved it. Had a great time with both groups. And as I was driving home, I was thinking about, I just had a flashback. I remember where I was at on the tollway. When I was driving to the second event, and this was about 2 years ago when I left the first event. I remember where I was at on the tollway driving to the second event, and I just had like this moment of like, man, this is so hard, right? And I realized, I thought about, because I've grown a lot as a speaker in the last couple of years, and I remember thinking like, man, it was so hard back then. Yeah. And I'm driving home from the second event, and I've been up since 4 a.m. Yesterday, spoke at 2 events, like just been nonstop all day, and I'm gonna go home and play with my kids until they go to sleep, right? And this wasn't even a hard day. Like I had a really good time speaking at both of these events. I didn't even feel stretched.
That's awesome,
right? And 2 years ago, and better audiences in both of the groups that I spoke at yesterday versus where I was 2 years ago. And I just think like, man, how much have I grown since then? It's not just how you work out in every area of your life. You have the opportunity to get stronger. What nearly killed you a couple of years ago is going to be pocket change for you in a few years.
Yeah. That was one of my big takeaways from the mount, and we'll get to that. But so how to tell the difference between boundary and barrier pain. Let's go into boundary.
I think that's a big question for a lot of people.
Yeah,
right?
because
maybe you're saying, okay, I want to press through.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to live with all of my pain thinking that it's a boundary, because then I can never grow.
Yes.
Right? I don't want to U-turn all of my pain. I don't want to be blue pill for forever. I want to do it, but I also don't want to drive through the barriers.
Yeah.
Right? That's bad too. Right? Don't just drive off the barrier in Colorado over the mountain saying like, man, I'm about to grow from this.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know that's a lot of people's response to pain is like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't want to just drive my life off the cliff. I don't want to destroy my body. That's a lot of people's response to pain. One of the pains is, we didn't get into these types of physical pains, but one of people's like devastating pains is the pain of mutilation. I've noted like, women suffer from this actually a lot more from men too. You punch a woman in the face, don't do that, right? You punch a woman in the face, she won't cry because it hurts. She cries because she thinks her face has changed. Men won't cry for the same reason.
Right.
But men, we all have the pain of mutilation, right? Like if you've like damaged your finger really bad, you're not just thinking about like, does it hurt? You're thinking about, have I lost function?
Right.
Right. We have a natural protection against those types of barriers, right? I don't want to, like if you cut your hand off, it doesn't hurt that bad. But you're going to feel this sensation of extreme loss because you've lost some major function in your life. There's those types of pains. And so those are boundaries, right? I don't want to drive through those, but a lot of people take these pains that are meant to be like, this is a growth pain.
Right.
And you're looking at it like I'm asking you to cut your finger off. So let's give some distinctions to how do I know the difference? I don't know if I'm cutting my finger off or this is going to make me better.
Right. So on the mental point, Garrett touched on it earlier, but on the mental boundary for pain, these are issues of morality. Like there's things that you should not be going like, well, I need to break through this. Like you shouldn't get okay about lying to people, hurting people, doing the wrong things. That's a pain that you should 100% recognize. I mean, the Bible talks about that as being the searing of your conscience. Like you don't ever want to get to the place where you're just like, oh, it got a lot easier. Yeah, that's because you've done it so many times.
Yeah, you numb that pain, and that is where you drive your life off the cliff.
Big time. Yeah, you're driving off the cliff, and you
I'll
don't
steal
even know
from
it.
people, whatever. I'll hurt people. I don't care.
Exactly.
Right? You've numbed the boundaries, and you're about to pay a serious consequence.
Yeah. Now, on the physical side, G, I mean, you talked about that. I think one of the things that's interesting for boundary pains, they almost always involve choice, and that's a really distinguishing characteristic. So, like on the mental side, like no one's forcing you to steal. It didn't just like accidentally happen. You have a choice. Well, let's apply that to physical, right? I mean, in the physical side of things, you almost always have a choice. And so if you've not made a choice.
And by choice, I also mean, could I accomplish the same thing a different way? And I don't mean we could take a helicopter ride to the top of the mountain.
Right.
I mean, think about the hot pan.
Right.
I don't need to touch the hot pan. I'm just trying to move the pan. Can I move the pan a different way?
Yeah.
Right. If I don't, and this is where the SEAL saying, like, just to give some insight to this, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. Right. A lot of people think that you're required, and the way they see life is, and and that's why they don't even want to do it in the first place. They think you just have to bare knuckle pick up a hot pan.
Right.
And then that's life. And the SEAL saying is, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. It's not about moral cheating. It's like, hey man, if you can just like kick the pan with your shoe, or like grab your t-shirt. No one's giving you oven mitts, right? If you just grab your t-shirt, do something else to accomplish the same objective and not feel pain. That's the right type of cheating,
right?
Because you're not cheating, stealing from people. You're cheating at these fake rules and standards that people make up. Well, it's just supposed to be this way. It's just supposed to be hard. You're supposed to just feel the burn of working, all of that stuff. That's the right type of cheating.
People do that all the time, though, where they get upset. Like, well, I had to do this, and you're just like finding another way to do it. That's not fair. Okay.
Sorry, I used my t-shirt as an oven mitt.
Exactly. Like, yeah, you could have done the same thing. So in the case of physical, what I would say, and we are not doctors, nor are we giving medical advice, but if you've not done anything and you just suddenly start having pains and it doesn't go away, you should really get that. You should pay attention to that one. That's not one to just be like, well, just time to try a different way. I have an unfortunate experience.
And it's really just the most important part, because you're right. We're not doctors, right? And I've had doctors in my life tell me plenty of things, and they're far more educated than me.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that even though they're far more educated than me, they don't know more than me. And what I mean by that is they don't know more about me.
Yeah, for sure.
Than me.
Yeah.
All they know, like, why would you let someone that gets 5 minutes of your time. Like they'll make a decision about your life in 5 minutes of their time. Yes, he's smarter than me, right? If I would why would you, you're going to hire a coach, right, to tell you what you should do with your life in only 5 minutes of your time.
Right.
That sounds kind of foolish, right?
Right.
In 5 minutes, you don't know enough about me to really say what I should do with my life. In 5 minutes of you looking at my scan and analyzing my anatomy, that's not, and me giving you some anecdotal data about how I feel, that's not enough information and time for you to prescribe everything in my life.
Yeah.
And so I say that to say, and I'm not, a lot of people can get really upset about this or say, that sounds so dumb, so foolish. That's fine. How's that working for you is what I would say. But I've had a lot of doctors far more educated than me, either people from the military or from the civilian world. These people spent over a decade in school. I'm not saying they don't know medicine way better than me. They just don't know me better than me. Right. And so it is upon you with anything that your doctor gives you, right? Get a second opinion.
Yeah.
What's your opinion?
Yeah.
Right. The most important opinion about your pain is your opinion.
Exactly.
Not your doctor's opinion. And a lot of people take their doctor's opinion. And so we're not trying to talk about, medical pain and doctor's opinions and all of that stuff, but how do you feel about what your doctor told you?
Yeah. Let's go to barrier pain, G. And what I loved about this is you said almost all mental pain is barrier pain. Now that's going to be a real check for people.
A lot of people would question that.
Yeah, a lot of people. What are
play devil's advocate here for the audience, Nick? What are some mental pains that people would say, well, that's not a barrier pain. I'm not supposed to grow from that. That's that's an awful pain, and I should just try to U-turn that as fast as I can.
I had some really traumatic experience in my life, Garrett. You don't know, when I was young, XYZ happened to me. This person did this, or I lost this person, and you don't understand because you don't know my pain. That would be a lot of what people would say.
I think about that. I also think, like, what about a person who, a friend in your life who died, right? And I didn't want this, right? And this is just the worst thing ever, and I'll never recover from this. Like, I'm going to hurt from this for forever, right? Some of those pains, whether it's the trauma, whether it's losing a friend, right? It is awful. You didn't choose it.
Yeah.
It's going to bring some great scars in your life, but what are you going to do with that pain?
Yes.
Right. And your reference experience shouldn't be like, if you want to, I worked with this guy in the Navy. He was a decathlete. He helped, he ran he wasn't a doctor, but he ran the stretch clinic. This guy was a decathlete in college, and he had like every major injury, from tearing an ACL to back injuries, shoulder injuries, knee injuries. And he'd recovered from every single one without surgery. Right? 0 surgeries in this guy's and so if I was trying to recover from an injury, I would want to follow somebody who'd recovered from the same injury, not follow someone who had said, this is the end of the road for you.
Yeah, for sure.
And so what I would say to someone who's looking at this awful trauma in their life, whatever you want to call that trauma, and say I'll never recover from this. I need surgery. I need to turn around. I need to go home. I need a wheelchair, right? And I mean mentally, I need a wheelchair. Mentally, I need a cast, whatever it is. Find people who've actually recovered from what you've done. And I'll say, for almost any type of trauma that you've been through, there's somebody who said, I'm going to use this for good.
Yep. 100%. Well, I mean, you said the thing about people who have lost somebody. I mean, for a perspective shift, I mean, you saw all sorts of people that lost their closest friends, their loved ones, their brothers in teams, and terrible things happening to people, and people just kept on going. It was a completely different thought process, because their perspective wasn't like, oh, this should never happen. It was like, this happens, but we keep going.
I think about the story of Joseph in the Bible, right? His brothers beat the snot out of him, wanted to murder him, talked about murdering him while he's just sitting there in the hole. How awful would you feel?
Yeah.
I mean,
and you're 13.
That's like extreme trauma.
Yeah.
Like, all of my older brothers hate me and want to murder me. You could feel so worthless, right? And then it's like, a lot of people have trauma and then get stuck there, right? Like he got there, or and then just go back to where they came from. Something happens to you and you go back to your family. Well, he had the worst trauma ever, and then was sold into slavery. Right? Like you think foster care is bad. How about you just become a slave? Right? That happens to him. And what he could have done as a slave is have a slave mindset. Just be a beat dog, just feel sorry for himself. I'm worthless. I'm less than a human being. Could have felt that way about his trauma, but he didn't. He decided to grow from what he'd been through. Yeah. Right. And so again, I just want to remind everyone that you can grow from the things that you go through if you choose to. Yeah. Right. You can take the pain in your life and say, this was maybe this was meant to hurt me, but I'm going to look at this as a barrier. Maybe it's not as positive as the gym. Maybe it's not as positive as, going from one speaking engagement in a day to 2 speaking engagements in a day. What if you've got an injury that you didn't ask for? What if you got a thorn in your side for the rest of your life? You can just say, you know what, I'm going to use this to grow through, right? I'm going to be better because of this, even though it's not a positive thing, right? Like getting a sickness or an ailment isn't like I got to grow from the weight of having so much opportunity in my life, right? What's the opposite of that? Like, I got to grow from the weight of I lost friends, I lost family, everyone's against me, and you could just quit from that, but you can grow from those things. It's not about how negative what happened to you is. It's about how you feel about what happened to you.
Yeah. Now, you talked about, and you said that you think, I think you said all mental pain is a barrier is what you actually said. And I think it's interesting to look at where the mental pains come from. And we talked about it coming from poor beliefs, previous experiences, and thoughts of entitlement are some of the biggest sources of our pain. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is just highlight, here's some poor beliefs. And if you have these, understand that you are hitting up against things that are barriers that you should break through.
When you look at movies, right? Like, not movies from today, because movies from today are kind of stupid. But look at movies from all the other times from like before the last few years. And you look at the hero and you look at the villain. Both of them usually have some sort of pain in their past.
Yes.
The hero says, because I'm hurt, I'll make sure that never happens to anybody again.
Yeah.
Right? And the villain says, because of what happened to me, everyone has to go through it too.
Yes. Very good.
Same pain, but they have a different view of it. Right. So instead of saying like, I have a friend who went through some incredible trauma as a child. And what he did is he like literally with his life, and it's what he's so dedicated to, is I'm going to make sure this never happens to anybody again. Right. Instead of saying like, because I'm hurt, I'm going to hurt other people. Because I'm hurt, the world is broken and I don't care about anything. Right. Instead of letting it be a boundary in his life and just turn around, like, or, drive through the boundary. Like, people broke me, so I'm going to break the world. People broke me, I'm going to break morals. I don't care about anything. And said, you know what, people broke me, I'm going to make sure no one else can be broken because of this. Right. And choose to get stronger because of the things that happened to you.
Yeah. I love that, man. Well, let's go through some of the poor beliefs we talked about. And these are things that are going to cause you more pain. This is you having barrier pain. So belief number 1, life shouldn't hurt. Like, if you think, honestly, you laugh at that, Garrett, but like how many people, and like the second one that goes with it, and this is directed.
No, if you believe that, everything's a boundary.
Yeah. And the other one that I put is God wants to take away pain. Like the amount of times that people.
That's a wrong belief.
It's a wrong belief. Look throughout, if you're like, well, I don't know about that.
I think about Joseph.
Yeah.
Right. I so love his story. It's one of my favorite stories in the Bible because his story is not about him. God used him to save all of the Israel people.
Yeah.
Right. From death and starvation. Joseph could have, I don't think he did, but he could have prayed every day, God, when are you going to save me from this?
Yeah.
Right? Like, God, do you even love me anymore? And God's saying, I love you so much.
Yeah.
Like, I gave you, like, I made you this way.
Yeah.
And I let this happen to you because of what it's going to do for you, because of who you'll become.
Yes.
Right? And what you can do with it. Right? Just trust me. Stay with me. And we can do this. Like, what you're going to do because of what's happened to you, if you'll trust me, if you'll push through, if you'll not turn around, it'll be greater than anything that you could ever imagine.
Yes.
That's the mindset that you have to have with pain.
Yes.
Joseph could have said, like, God, I thought you loved me, and I thought because you love me that you won't let me go through pain. And that's not the truth. God sent his own son. It says God so loved the world that he sent his son to die.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so much. If you'll decide, like, I'm going to take pain as an opportunity to grow, and I'll turn my pain into purpose. I'll let it be sacrificial.
Yes.
I'll use this not for me, but for other people, right? Like my friend who was hurt so wrongly as a child and said, you know what, I'm going to use this to help others. I'm going to use this pain to make me better. I'm going to grow from it so that I can protect others, so that I can love others, so I can be what I'm supposed to do with this.
Yeah. I'm going to quote my man, Garrett Unkelbach, who said that pain without purpose is punishment. Pain with purpose is discipline.
Yeah.
And I thought when you said that, I thought that was genius. And you know what it says about Jesus in Hebrews was during his time on earth, he was a man of many sorrows who learned obedience. How? Through what he suffered. Mm-hmm. This is who we're following after. So if you're a person who's following Jesus and you think that what is really waiting for you is a cloud with a harp and really for God to just make everything easy, you're missing the point. If you're praying for something and you're like, oh, it's not coming true, and your conclusion is, well, then God must not be real. And I'm talking about this from experience of a person who pursued a lot of miracles and pursued God based on a certain expectation, and then when it didn't turn out the way I thought it should, threw everything out. You have a wrong belief that is going to cause you a lot of pain. And it's a limitation that you need to understand. So here's another poor belief.
And I just want to reemphasize the point. We're addressing wrong beliefs.
Correct.
Right? Because when you have these wrong beliefs, you'll look at your barrier pain as boundary pain.
100%. And here's another one. The pain's only going to increase. I have to say that if you believe that, the pain's just going to get over, your brain, this was my big takeaway from our hike, from our mountain climb. The brain will overestimate your pain and underestimate your resilience. And like you see people, we put previous experiences in here. Here's a great experience. Here's a great example of this. I can't go do that because I've done that before, and it's really bad for me. Oh, so you've done this exact thing, and it was the pain was excruciating. Yeah, it was. Oh, when did you do that? I was 13. Okay, well, how old are you now? Well, I'm 33. Do you think anything's changed in the last 20 years? And like if you know what I mean? Like I'm giving a really obvious one, and people do that.
I've heard it though.
For me on the mountain, I was like going, oh man, I feel like I'm going to pass out, and my head is thumping, and my heart rate's at like 160. I have metrics for all this stuff. I'm like, and I'm your brain goes, well, how do you think it's going to be? Like, you can't do this for 2 hours. It's exactly what you talked about in Buds. That's what was going through my brain.
I kicked everyone in the nuts with it a little bit, but I was trying to give them some perspective. And when we were there, I said, when this gets hard, just remember there's 10-year-olds that live in this town that have climbed this mountain.
Yeah, he said that to us. He said lots of things like that. He was a very encouraging guy. But like
the reason that the 10-year-olds can climb the mountain is because they live at that altitude. But still, there's 10-year-olds that have climbed that mountain. So.
But people will do this all the time. They'll do like a straight line appreciation if you're a finance person, where you think, if you don't know what that means, it means just imagine a perfectly straight line up at a 45-degree angle. Like, my pain is just going to keep increasing. No, because you don't know how you're going to react.
Because I bet I'll get stronger.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to be a different person in 5 minutes than you were now. That's just the truth. And I experienced that. We would go and I'm like, oh, actually, I'm getting better. And then, I did have my dark points, but this is true of life as well.
I laughed in Nick's dark moment. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, whatever you did, man. And the worst part about that was I didn't even enjoy the cookie I ate. That was your wife's cookie. Anyways, that's a whole nother story.
The one thing you can know, not just about pain, but about all of life, is that it's temporary.
Yes.
Right. So when you go through great things, appreciate them because they won't last for forever.
Yeah.
And when you go through pain, just remember it won't last for forever.
Exactly. And so another poor belief, and there's two poor beliefs, and we touched on this earlier about Garrett's seal comment. I really hope that you listen to this. We're going to repeat it because it's so valuable. Don't believe I don't do well with pain or they do better with pain. Because that's what I think. That was one of the first things I noticed about Garrett was I felt like people put him on the SEAL pedestal, and you see somebody accomplish something great, and you assume, you don't say it this clearly, but you're like, oh, well, he's a Navy SEAL. He's a little crazy. And so what you're saying is like, well, it was easier for him. That's why he was able to do it.
The funny part,
you don't know that.
Yeah, they don't know that. And the funny part about that to me is I know people that are way tougher than me.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know you know that. But I'm just saying what you said to me recently, there's like 4,000 SEALs in the entire history of the Navy. So like very few people get to meet a SEAL. Right. And so like you're the representation for a lot of people, and that's understandable. But like, I just think if you're looking at somebody else and you're thinking, oh, well, I don't do very well with pain, or I don't do very well with insert whatever it is here, and they must do better with it. Really check yourself on that, because you don't know that. What if they're just tougher than you? What if they're just better than you? Oh, well, then that means you can get better. That means you can get tougher.
Let them be a positive reference for you.
So here's good beliefs, because we don't want to just give you the negative. Here's two good beliefs, and these are massive. One, I have a choice. That's like literally what we've been saying to you the whole podcast. You can make your reaction to pain, your beliefs about pain better. You can choose to grow from them. Remember the two lessons for types of pain. Boundary is not this way, which guess what? That means there's another way. Doesn't mean quit. The barriers, hey, it's time to grow. It means that it's there. It's a limitation. And guess what? We're all about breaking limitations on this podcast. So if you hit that barrier, it's time to grow.
And the overall lesson of pain is that I'm not going to let pain dictate to me who I am, right? If I want to do something, the only way is I'm going to either, if I want to do something and there's pain involved, it either means I'm going to do it a different way or I'm going to grow and continue forward.
Yeah, love that. The second good belief is that your attitude will make or break it. We talked about that briefly. I mean, we touched on it earlier as well about how big your attitude and mentality are.
It's a superpower.
It really is. Yeah. Now we're going a bit long, G. We have the second thing we want to answer.
I want to summarize that really quick.
Okay.
Right. What is the point of the good beliefs? Right. Is what'll help you understand the difference. Like if you have those negative beliefs, that's where you think barriers are boundaries.
Correct.
If you'll have these positive beliefs, because that's the question. Like the first question we're answering is like, okay, I want to be better. I want to grow through pain, but how do I know the difference between a boundary pain and a barrier pain? If you have those right beliefs, it'll help you understand, okay, these aren't necessarily boundaries. These are barriers. I can push through them and I can grow.
Correct.
Right. So that's the first thing, right? Have those right beliefs. You can better understand the difference between boundaries and barriers. Let's say you have those good beliefs and you want to grow. Like, man, okay, I know that these pains are barriers in my life, but I'm not very good at going through barriers. I'm not very good at my limits. So how do we get better at enduring?
Yeah, well, that's a great question and a great transition. Well done, G. The very first thing we said, and guess what? We've talked about being able to train pain on this podcast before. Our only sponsor of the podcast at the time of recording is Freedom Plunge, because we are big fans of doing hard things. Ice baths are a great way to train your pain, train your reaction to it. I mean, if you don't believe us, go back to episode 4 and listen to my first ice bath.
It's also at the the beginning of our Instagram if you want to go back and watch the videos.
Yeah, which I still think Garrett goes back and watches it for his own enjoyment. But counteract that.
I don't need to. It's all right here.
I know, and you remind me of it regularly, so thank you. Counteract that with now I take ice baths regularly, and like we went in a lake.
Yeah,
when we were up in the mountain.
We went to Leadville. We got in Turquoise Lake. If you've ever been there, and the water was in the upper 40s, which for most of us who get in our ice baths around 40 or lower, we're like, this is warm water.
Honestly, it was not even challenging.
We could have stayed in for a while. The sun was out. It was so
gorgeous.
nice.
Yeah.
You could tell who in our group, because a lot of us in the group get in an ice bath every day, and there's a couple of us in the group that didn't, and you could tell.
Yeah. And if you listen to this podcast, you get $100 off at Freedom Plunge. You can go into the show notes, and you can get that discount. They're amazing. You can look at all that up. Hit up Chris, follow him at Freedom Plunge on Instagram. He's the man. But what I will say, if you don't have an ice bath and you're like, that's not my, what are you doing that's hard every day? There's that great quote that says a man should do 2 things he hates every single day just for practice. And I can't remember who it's by, but Pastor Keith quotes it all the time. And it's true. You have to start doing hard things, because the only way you're going to start getting better at pain is to practice it. The second thing, G, I feel like you should share because you know it so well.
Yeah, so there's a thing in the military that we would do this. This was like a thought for close quarters clearance, but you would think like, weapons tactics and clearing a home would be something that doesn't apply to anything else. But I feel like I learned so many lessons from that, because it was such a combination of strategy and tactics that were very crucial, right? And I learned things there that I feel like apply in so many places. And one of the things that they taught us was like right before you take a corner, you would take this thing called a pregnant pause. Like even when you're running really fast, we have to clear this target as fast as we can to not chase.
Yeah.
Right? To not let the clock push you, but to you be in control in the moment. And so I have, 30 seconds left. I got to finish clearing this building. I got to move so fast, but I'm going to come to the edge of this corner, and I'm just going to, then I'm going to take the corner, right? Because I'm going to take the corner under control. And how this applies to pain is when you're in that moment of extreme pain, don't let the pain push you.
Yeah.
Don't run from the pain. Sit there, take a quick pause with the pain, and say, is this a boundary? Is this a barrier?
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to let pain tell me who I am. When I'm clearing a target, I'm not going to let the clock, I'm not going to let someone yelling at me, I'm not going to let pressure, I'm not going to let the buzzer tell me what I have to do. I have to be in control, right? So when you face that moment of extreme pain, just take the pause, take the breath, and say, is this a boundary or is this a barrier? Do I need to find a different way, or do I need to push through this?
Yeah.
Right. And most of the time you'll find that the answer is that you just need to push through it.
Yeah. And the last one is one that we've literally been talking about the whole time. It's your mentality. It's your mindset. You talked about having a growth mindset towards pain. If you were like, wait a minute, I couldn't remember which ones you said about the boundary or the barrier. What we've said on this podcast, if I could summarize it, is there's almost nothing that should make you turn around.
Pain should not dictate to you
exactly
who you are or where you're going in life.
Yes.
Pain's either going to tell you, try a different approach, or you need to grow.